Yo, if you are all here with me, I know I'm a little bit later than usual. That does not mean that we are not having a show. Welcome to the Jack Dappa Blues radio program. Somebody just literally uh, called my phone while I was live. So what's going on, good folk? I know my hair look crazy, but that's not what we hear about. All right, I'm much later than usual, which is okay. Uh, what's going on here? All right, I think we okay. I think we okay. Um, and if you're here with me, just jump in the feed and say what's happening. I want to put the show tag up one more time because today we're talking about the blues, a living oral history. Now, as you all know, as a folklorist, as an ethnomusicologist, as a blues practitioner, and someone who celebrates the culture of the darker hued First Nations and the freedmen and the at one time enslaved, and then everything else that comes with that. I think it is imperative to discuss the blues as an oral history, how we celebrate the tradition, or better yet, how we hear in the music societal shifts. And many of you who's taken this ride with me for the many years, or even for the last couple of months, at whatever point you joined us, you know that one of the major functions of Jack Dappa Blues Heritage Preservation Foundation, the African American folklorist, and the work that I do here and with my cohorts and everything like that, is putting in the proper context the story of the blues people. Right. So this is one of the ways we can do it. And so, and a lot of times when I say that, I usually use the term societal shifts, or whatever monumental moment. So even maybe not something that could be considered a monumental moment. Maybe it's just something that just happened. But the blues kind of talks to us about those things. It gives us the climate of these eras. Um, and man, I read this book recently. Um, what is this? Grassroots Democracy by Benjamin Barson. It's a good book. It's a good book. I he has a vision of a utopia coming out of this dystopian civilization with the usage of Black traditional music called jazz. Um, he connects jazz to the Haitian Revolution. He speaks a lot about Creole. One of the biggest conversations my cohorts and I had about it was how do you define Creole? I know for me, I don't define it, right? My dad could define it. His parents could define it. My aunties and cousins, and those of that region. I was born in New Orleans and grew up in New Orleans. They can define it. Baton Rouge and these different places. I have a good friend that's a Zydeco player, and he informed me of what Creole actually is, right? So what does that have to do with anything? I brought that up because in that one of the discussions, or better yet, one of the things in the book that, he mentions the blues, but it's almost as if jazz and the blues are separate. They did become separate. And he speaks of jazz in a very political and revolutionary sense, right? So what we're doing this evening, I guess you could say similarly, but not last week we did protest song, blues as protest songs. What we're really doing is, I don't want to say uncovering, but I'm having a conversation with you all about blues as a living oral history. Okay. And please, by all means, chime into the conversation. Now, for those of you who has been rocking with me the past month and a half on these Sunday live broadcasts, please forgive me, because I know I'm like, 1 week is 9 o'clock, 1 week is 9:30. Tonight, I think it was 9:45. I'm working to get a specific time between the hours of 9 and 10. Why so late? I don't know. Central Time, and I should also say that Central Time is 9:51. Eastern Central Time, in Eastern Standard Time, excuse me, it is 10:51. Pacific Time, I would imagine it is 8:51. Right? So, and then I couldn't even tell you overseas times and stuff like this. I don't know. I think a Sunday night show is I think it rocks better, just for lack of a better term. Most of us, most people go to service on Sundays. They have family dinners on Sundays. Some people don't go to service on Sundays. Some go on Saturdays. Whatever your belief system and functionality is. But to my understanding, Sunday is a family day, the football day, or big sports day, and different things like this. And I kind of would like to talk to y'all at the top of your week, but not in a way where there's a big urgency. It's more of I would like this to be a little bit more casual, where we discuss topics that could be considered urgent, or topics that are very significant and sensitive. Because when we speak about the blues and the blues people, that is a quite sensitive topic. So, some house cleaning before I get to it. So you all remember we had a great time with the master's class last week, and we're going to be doing another master's class. All right. What's happening with y'all? What's happening with y'all in the Instagram world? What's happening with y'all in the Instagram world? I got to figure out how I can get your comments over here where I'm at. We're gonna have another master's class, so make sure. That's what I should have did. Give me 2 seconds while I'm talking to you, so I can give you the link of the Jack Dappa Blues Heritage Eventbrite page, so you can follow there. You can follow us there. Okay, and we're gonna have to wait on that because it's not allowing me. Okay, hold on. Here we go. All right, I'm going to put this in the chat, and I'm also going to run it live. Okay. So that's where you guys, if you're interested in the master classes or any events, we're actually right now working on a We the Blues People. We're working on a We the Blues People panel and forum. Okay. So that's in the chat. So we're talking about Blues as oral history, right? So before we get to it, if you have an idea what oral history is and why blues is considered an oral history, and y'all know I like to put up pictures, drop in the comments because I speak to y'all, right? You know, we discuss it. Let me figure out how I can get y'all on Instagram. I'm not sure how we could do that. But blues as oral history, and we're gonna go deep about this a little bit and figure out how we could make this. Well, we don't need to figure out nothing. We're gonna make this a very interesting conversation. Oh, please make sure y'all cop some shirts, hoodies, right? And we'll talk about that later, okay? And all the other stuff. Join the Patreon so you can get the Jack Dappa Blues Reflexive podcast, and that podcast is more speaking about my experience in the field, in the discipline, what I'm learning, what I did wrong, what I think I did right, what I could do better, what I think about the actual discipline. And there's also here's something. So this actual episode I was going to do as my blues blog and play some music and discuss it and on Patreon, but I think it would serve the blues community and those interested better if we discussed it here. Okay, but I will say once I get at least 20 more Patreon members, I will continue. Not just the Reflexive podcast. But the blues blog is the journey of me recording my first blues album, the African American Folklorist and the Blues, which is also kind of an oral history project, if you will, and a Black folk narrative. Folk narrative being the key terminologies, right? So now we're going to get into this fully. I like this picture. So I'm gonna put it up. Why do I like this picture and why did I show folks picking cotton? Well, because a lot of people think this is where the blues begins. And this is why blues as oral history is very significant, because blues did not begin on the cotton field, okay? Blues did have evolutions and pivots and different things where there was a functionality on the cotton field, in the cotton field, around the cotton field, the plantation life, around the plantation, on the outskirts of both locations, in the Black South. Now, the Black South is somewhat ambiguous because we are now understanding that from Florida to Oklahoma to Alabama, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, all these places was, not only Indian territory, but that's the Black South. And this is where I wouldn't say it's the land of the blues, but it is the land where the blues cultivated. Now, was it always a cultural expression? Was it always an entertainment expression? That's one of the things that we discussed when I talked about the book Brass Roots Democracy, which oddly enough, one of his points was the beginning of the blues starting in Storyville in New Orleans. I always refer to Chris Thomas King, who is a Louisiana brother and a blues musician, and also believes the blues started there. I would seriously encourage you all to listen. I might even put the link up to my interview with Chris Thomas King, where we discuss well, not even just the beginning of the blues, but the misconception of the beginning of the blues, okay? So if I remember, somebody can remind me. I'll put that up in the feed. You could check that out. So I have this picture of a cotton, folks picking cotton. Then I have this is a plantation, right? Well, he's a sharecropper, right? He's tilling the land. It could be a plantation, but these are all spaces of the blues. Some of you that's been on this Sunday night journey with me remember these two pictures based on some of the other programs and discussions that we had where you can go to Jack Dappa Blues and find it, right? But I want you guys to understand blues as an oral history, and that these images, blues didn't start there, but the blues became an oral history of these moments in these locations and others, right? So oral history, so let's start with what oral history is. And if you know what oral history is, forgive me, okay? If you know what oral history is, forgive me. If you want to drop a line in the comments and share your definition, please do. So, oral history. Now, first, I want to preference this particular segment as the communal dialogue. So, blues, we're starting with the idea that blues is a communal dialogue. And in that, we then define blues as an oral history. This is where we're starting, okay? So now I just want to preference what oral history is. And for those of you academics, and when I say that, please, I didn't mean that condescendingly. It felt like it sounded condescending. There is a functionality and a definition of oral history for oral historians, for folklorists, for anthropologists, cultural anthropologists, for historians, ethnomusicologists, ecomusicologists, all the title disciplines and fields, sociologists, right? I lean towards the function rather than definition as a applied folklorist. However, I'm going to define it to the best of my ability to give you context for what we're discussing, and then to give more to the definition of it, how it works or lives within the blues. All right. Again, if you just please chime in. This is a conversation rather than me just talking at you or lecturing. It may feel funny because sometimes you don't see me, you see images and what have you, but that's part of the process, right? Okay, so oral history, and if you can't hear me, let me know. Oral history is the practice of preserving and passing down knowledge, experiences, and cultural narratives through spoken word, song, and performance. Oh, there's the key word right there. So you can actually preserve, pass down knowledge. And we're going to break it down a little bit more because oral history is also the what happened. And so you can do this through song, spoken word, and performance. And it's also, again, the passing down of knowledge, experiences, and cultural narratives through spoken word, song, and performance. Here's something, right? Here's something, because with a lot of times, these things are based on the text, the written word, the documented word. But oral history is not necessarily functioning in the written word space, right? It is functioning as conscious, right? Let me look at you guys before I put this back up. Now, I want to ask you what I mean by conscious. Why is oral history considered conscious? If you think of people like Karis One, and folks in that space, how to utilize the term conscious, oral history functions in consciousness or in the space of consciousness if you will, because it is oral, it is coming from, it is living words, it is not just performative words, but it has sensory, right? It becomes an entity once it leaves your being. So if it's performative, if it's saying in phrases of Black vernacular, Southern Black vernacular, it can evoke emotion, it can evoke memory. I'm not saying that if you read it, it won't have an emotional effect. It won't have or trigger a memory. However, what I am saying is words, spells, powers, etc., once it leaves, even if depending on your folk belief, you know, the Bible, we can use biblical text. Your word goes up and it's not void, right? So when you think, well, when I'm thinking oral history, I'm not necessarily thinking of the written word. I'm thinking of expressions, consciousness, spirit, breath coming from the vessel and it's living. Why is that important? I want to put up Son House because he's part of this too. There's a few people. I'm not just putting up random people for no reason. You'll know why I'll put up Son House. But why is that important? Because now this oral history, the term oral, the spoken history is living now. Does that mean through text it doesn't live? Doesn't necessarily mean that. But there's a different functionality when it's spoken. And that now, of course, this is, excuse me, my interpretation and belief of it. You know, you may ask another scholar how they feel about it or how they may describe it. But then if you think about how the blues functions, oral, O-R-A-L, oral, A-U-R-A-L, and we've spoken about this before. There's a sensory aspect to oral history that is not present with just text, right? So now, unlike written history, which is documented in books, oral history is what some of you call fluid. It is dynamic. Now, I'm not saying that written history is not dynamic, fluid, or deeply personal. Personal narratives, at least the personal narratives that's been written for the African American folklorist, is deeply personal, it is dynamic, and it's fluid. However, again, oral history, oral, we're dealing in sensory. So it lives through the people who tell it, tell it, tell it, speak it, speak it. Why am I focused on that specifically? Because you speak it into existence. You write it down to remember it and evoke memory. You speak it into existence. Oral history, spoken history, right? Okay. So now with that, the blues as a form of oral history captures the lived realities of Black Americans. As we chronicled, is that how you say it? Chronicled? Chronicled? That's the word, right? Struggle, triumphs, cultural expression, love, food, cultural engagement. I tell you all this all the time, and if you read my work or anything, it's or the people that I speak to on a daily basis or share their works. The kitchen is one of the most and highly functional places in my tribe and our belief. That's where the stories are passed. That's where the stories are kept. That's what a medicine is. What medicine am I talking about? Herbs, the spices, the food. So the magic happens literally and figuratively. So the blues as oral history speaks to that, right? Now, I want to define communal dialogue. Or at least I would like to attempt to define communal dialogue. Okay? See, communal dialogue in the blues, it functions as oral history, right? It informs us about racial, social, political, and societal climates of the time. So now understand what I'm trying to explain. Communal dialogue in the blues functions as oral history. Communal dialogue, community dialogue, kinfolk, folk group, tribe dialogue functions as oral history. So that means doesn't matter what era, what you know, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, turn of the century, 1900s, right? 2000s. The blues as oral history informs us about the racial, social, political, and societal climate of those moments. So now let's talk about Son House. Ha ha, now we got to it. Everybody knows this is my guy, but you know, as much as I want him to be only my guy, he's not only my guy. Son House, Edward James Son House Jr., is a bluesman who is revered by so many performers of the blues, enthusiasts of the blues, documentary of the blues, researchers of the blues. Had a talk with a good friend of mine last night, and like, you know, Son House was a pastor. We know this, but what he was bringing to the table was his urgency as a minister probably seeped into his performances, which is what made him such a dynamic bluesman. Whether he was attacking musically, you know, performatively, or felt attacked in a song talking about a broken heart or what have you. All of these emotions and dynamics exuded from him, and we felt it, right? So now, how does this equate to oral history? Well, remember, we defined oral history, right? We define oral history as the practice of preserving and passing down knowledge, experiences, and cultural narratives through spoken word, song, and performance. So, Son House is the embodiment of oral history through his song, through his performance, through his cultural narrative, and through his experience, because it's all there, right? I'll look at you guys for a little while. I hope you guys see me. I'll put him back up in a second, right? But why is it so there's a few songs that we can discuss. Death Letter Blues is an oral history. because it gives us, and he explains it, right? I did not, maybe I'll start doing that. Um, Playing a little bit of videos while I don't worked it up, so I'm not going to do that now. He explains that in his day, when someone passed, you get this letter. I believe he said it was a black envelope and it was a death letter. So now he's actually explaining, he's walking us through history, experience, cultural narrative as he gives us the context of the song. Then he begins, when he sings the song, his performance is all history because it's giving us a feel, sensory, orally, AURAL, right, of how these moments felt then. Then the words describes what happens at that time, and then how he goes through this particular moment. That's one, right? That's not even the one that I was really going to start with, but remembering that he gives context. I also want to talk about Am I Right or Wrong by Son House, right? Also, American Defense, right? Because both of these songs reflect the state of the world at the time they were recorded, addressing issues of morality, justice, and survival. These songs, like many others in the blues tradition, are more than entertainment. Well, they serve as a historical document, a testament to the resilience of struggles and personal issues. And I had to turn, I had to bring myself back to camera, so because we're having a conversation, and I want to speak to you here. I don't want to romanticize the fact that all these musicians, male and female, guitar slingers, vocalists, whatever, even the women of Storyville that were ladies of the night, that sang in these burlesques and brothels. I don't want to romanticize it as if I'm saying they understood they were documenting history and that they were the, how can I word this? They were the gateway, you know, to or the portal to another. No, no. They were vessels of expressions of the moment. It became oral history. Now, when you have someone like Son House who recorded a song in the 20s or in the 40s, and then in the resurgence of Black traditional blues on college campuses and coffee houses and these cultural organizations and stuff like this, you have the opportunity, and he has the ability to give you context of what was going on at the time when he made the songs. Bucka White, I believe, did one of these, and many of them. We know that the Georgia Sea Island Singers did one of these videos with Bess Lomax, right? Now, Bessie Jones is probably um, not a good example of what I'm saying right now, because she was quite intentional of being a vessel of tradition and culture. Okay, she was very intentional about that. Um, to my understanding, I think she always was intentional about that. And I also believe Elijah Cox was very intentional about that, right? Um, I don't know if Leadbelly was conscious of that initially, but then he became conscious of that. And again, Son House becomes conscious of this. So what I'm getting to is, as I'm explaining the importance of his performance as oral history, and then he explains what these songs mean. I'm not sure when he was performing them as a young man in joints and house parties and all these places, was he explaining it in the same way? I think he was just performing for the audience in the crowd like most people of that time, right? As it goes on, it becomes that. There are some people who may have been doing it back then. I know now, and this is something that I would like to discuss before we move on and look at some of the lyrics. Someone I did a performance. No. So I have this little short film. It's called How I Hear the Blues, right? And it comes out of a class I'm in as I work towards my PhD in ethnomusicology. Excuse me. And the class was, the class was called, I believe, filmmaking as ethnography. And but I kind of opted or took a chance to do more of a reflexive autoethnographic, what I like to call cinema sensory piece of how I hear the blues. And and this is kind of oral history-ish for me, but there's a brother, he's a musician. He's a musicologist, if my memory serves me correctly. And he's a distant relative, right? So he comes from Africa. And he was very, very excited about the piece after he watched it in a good way. And he saw things that evoked memory of his people's cultural expression, right? So if anyone's seen me perform, they know I exaggerate the foot stomping and things like this. And I say exaggerate it to give you a visual. I'm not, well, without giving, as me and my brother just say, shopping our demo with directions. It was, but it was that what I define as exaggerated foot stomping that he noticed throughout my performances is what made him want to speak to me, because it reminded him of he and his people's cultural expression. And he was like, what inspired you, you know, to do that? How does that just come? Because what I believe he was trying to gauge is there just something innately in us, whether it be melanated people or just expressive people of any particular tradition or culture or tribe or what have you? Is there this innate ability or innate, not even ability, but this inner in your spirit to just, that's how we respond to sound. That's how we respond to music, but particularly as melanated folk respond to the bass thump, and then the respond to it was more the bass thump, right? And I could say, and I did say, a part of it is definitely, I guess the term would be natural. I'm not, I would say it's definitely spiritual. However, more so to the topic, that's when I realized that's how I receive Son House. So in my mind, in my ear, in my head, that's how he's playing. though that's not how he's playing. He's playing his way, but that's how I hear. So when I'm listening to Son House, the way I respond, the way I look when I perform is how I hear his performance. If that makes sense. So now, what does that have to do with it being oral history? All of these things inform us, because then it becomes, well, and it goes back to what actually, before I get to what it becomes, it goes back to the idea of romanticizing this thing of being a conduit of history intentionally, when history is being made, when a lot of times they're not thinking about making history, they're thinking about they're in that moment, whether it's the best performance they can give or making as much tips, whatever it is they're thinking about. But then later on, again, going back to that video when he's performing and explaining Death Letter Blues, giving it context, this is later on looking back, right? So we get him in two spaces. We get the in real time, then we get the oral history version where he's giving us the context, which informs us or informs me. So now as I perform and I engage, my entire self, the African American folklorist and the blues performance is set up as a Black folk narrative, as a oral history, because I'm giving context, right? I'm exuding, or my discourse is history orally and orally sensory through the performance or with the performance. Does that make sense? So now we're going to go. I want to talk about Am I Right or Wrong first. Please, if you've heard the song before, drop a number 1 in the chat, because this wrong is like, I'm assuming this wrong. The song, I really like this song, right? It is, I would venture to say, what people think they know of, or what they believe they're used to hearing from, hey, Junior, what's happening? What they think they're hearing from Son House, it's not in the norm. And I preface it that way because there are like 2 or 3 songs that could be what people just, when you say Son House, Death Letter Blues, Son House, Preaching Blues, these are kind of the only 2 songs. There's a couple others, but these are the real only 2 songs that, and Levy Can't Moan, but mostly Death Letter Blues and Preaching Blues seems to be what could be considered the most popular, most discussed, most disseminated of Son House. So when I say this is what some people may believe not his usual style of play, that's why I say that. So Am I Right or Wrong and American Defense, these are like, could be ragtime. These are like real parlor songs, if you will, in style, right? But Am I Right or Wrong really discuss something that man, I I like showing Son House, but I want to talk to y'all, and I want y'all to talk back. Because it's like, I should find out. You know what? Let me see when this song was written. All right, because this is going to help. Well, I don't even know if that's an honest thing, right? Because we find out that a lot of these songs may be 100 years old, right? But we also find out that a lot of these folks like Son House, like Memphis Minnie, like P.D. Wheatstraw, was performing a lot of their original songs years before they were actually recorded. So to be fair, let me find out the year the song was actually recorded. And then we're going to discuss the content and how it is how it plays as a oral history tune. Okay. So now, Am I Right or Wrong was now you can find this information on the Library of Congress, one of my favorite places, and the American Folklore Folk Life Center, right? And the people I know there, I love them to death, right? So you can find Am I Right or Wrong by Son House, the information of the song in the Library of Congress, which I'm on the website right now because the song was actually recorded by, if I'm not mistaken, Alan Lomax, okay? In 1942. All right. Mississippi, what is it? Robinsonville. Okay, so we know it was recorded in 1942, but I can't tell you because if you listen to the style, if you think of like carnivals and these type of events that you see in these movies that depict 1800 the 1800s, the early 1900s, the 1800s, that kind of sound. I call it parlor sound. A buddy of mine, he had another name for it, but nonetheless, it was recorded in 1942. But by the sound of it, and then by the work of Lomax, and then what's being discussed, I would imagine Son House wrote and played that many years ago. I don't know if you all remember, I speak often about how just like Muddy and all of these folk, and I think it's horrible with Muddy because like Mercy Morganfield, Mud Morganfield, these people are still here. They could tell you when their daddy was born. Okay. So Son House, these very zealous enthusiasts were telling him when he was born, I think he said he was born in 1895, I believe. And they was trying to tell him he was born in like 1906 or something. I don't remember those dates. I have it written down because I feel bad because that's part of one of my original performance of Jack Dappa Blues experience that has evolved into the African American folklore and the blues. I speak about that. So the reason why I give that context, remember context is important, is because this is a song that sounds like it is in the early 1900s, mid to late 1800s. Composition wise and style of singing wise, okay? Am I right or wrong? I would encourage you all to go listen to this song. So now, blues as oral history, and we're talking about the performance, and we're talking about what's being said and the style of music, how that informs us of oral history past tense. Okay, so the music alone and the style of singing, the performance and the composition already informs us of a previous date. Okay, so now I want to talk about what's being discussed because I think it's really interesting and Son House as a lyricist. And we're going to speak about this. Hopefully, I can get to this today. Floating lyrics, because Son House, as a songwriter and a lyricist, because he's a folk artist, he a lot of times comes up with some of these songs on the spot, or at least marries other songs to different compositions. and you can listen to it. And I mean, he comes first, then you can hear it in Robert Johnson, then you can hear it in Muddy Waters. But that's something we'll talk about in another segment, right? This segment, the reason why I brought up the possibility of the time when it was recorded and what he was talking about, because we know at the turn of the century, we know about Black Swan Records, and we know about how colorism was always a thing, in one way or another. But Son House actually is discussing colorism in this song. So he's like, am I right or wrong? Okay. He's actually saying, you need not think because I'm black, I'm going to beg you to take me back. No, baby. Was that right or wrong? But then he goes on to say, I mean, he says many things, but you need not think because you're brown, I'm going to let you dog me around. No, baby. Now, hold on. Then we go to another lyric where he's, or stanza, if you want to be technically correct. He says, you need not think because you're yellow, I'm going to let you have my last $4. No, baby. So now, why, what does this mean? Why am I bringing this up? So let me say, I know I sang it. Let me just say it. Let's start from the first mention of color, because this is oral history, right? This is special collection. This is archive work, right? I think of a mentor, a good brother, who did a class. Some of us was in his PhD program called "Sounding the Archive" and "Trouble in the Water," and understanding that it's not even about a color, more cultural reference, and education reference, right? Social reference, where I may see something someone else may not see, okay? Or think to archive it or what have you. Or think of this as oral history. But now he's speaking about colorism, which is really ironic because he says, you need not think because I'm black, I'm gonna beg you to take me back. Listen to the positionality that's being disclosed here, I guess you could say. You need not think because I'm black, I'm going to beg you to take me back. Now let's go down a little bit. You need not think because you're brown, I'm going to let you dog me around. Then we go down another, and these are happening in threes, and they're getting perpetually more intense, urgent, right? So then here's I believe this is the last. He kind of does it again, but I think it's only 3 mentions of color. I mean, he says it again, but only 3 colors. You need not think because you're yellow, I'm going to give you my last $4. So now, yeah, then he goes back and he kind of says it again, right? I'm just checking before I go into it because what okay, now why, how, first of all, you want to know how is it oral history? I because he's giving us orally a history of what's going on at this time, and it's I don't want to say it's direct, and a lot of times when you're listening to songs, you're hearing stuff and you're not really processing what's really being said, which is okay. But in those 3 stanzas, in those 3 instances, he's clearly making a distinction of positionality and treatment of that era based on color. Black, beg you to take me back. So the black is at the lowest. Brown, I'm not going to let you dog me around. Brown is at the middle, then yellow, I'm not going to give you my last $4, which would become the highest, right? Good sister, what's happening with you? So, with again, given the definition of oral history and the blues being defined as oral history, the practice of preserving and passing down knowledge, experiences, and cultural narratives through spoken word, song, and performance. Excuse me. And again, that also goes back to what we just finished discussing. As in the moment when he's actually performing these things, I can't say about 1942 because I'm quite sure he gave context. I would need to. I don't want to take time to read that excerpt in possible transcription in the Library of Congress, but let's just say when he actually first recorded or performed the song, I'm sure he wasn't giving context to the audience on the spot because it was in real time, and everybody in the room understood the rules of engagement. So they knew what he was talking about. But later on down the line, he would be able to give context, meaning pass down knowledge, right, through song and or performance. And then we're also discussing it as communal dialogue, how the blues functions as oral history as a communal dialogue, and he's discussing racial and social politics. That sounds like oral history to me. Now, we talk about American defense. I won't stay too long on American defense so we can get through some of these segments, right? Where we at? Here we go. So he goes, no use. Oh, one of the terms was fairs. That's what I was looking for. Fairs, parlor, fair music, parlor music, right? No use in having no fairs. This war may last you for years. American defense. Well, you use some sense. Just have to take care of your boys. You must raise more produce. Farmers set sail and use. Save all your worries and toils. And toil, sorry. No use in save no fares. No us in setting in no tents. This war may last you for years. Well, wheel the red, white, and blue that represents you. You ought to do everything that you can. Buy a war saving stamp. You men go to their camps. Be brave and take this pin. That sounds like oral history to me. This is Son House. Now, I know I didn't sing that or was quite as animated as I did Am I Right or Wrong? And that's only because I'm working to put Am I Right or Wrong about a repository. But I do listen to this song, American Defense. This is oral history of a war that's going on in the moment, right? So we also have to remember the dialogue is not just between the singer and the guitar, but it's also between the band members and things like this. However, I want to stick to the singer and the guitar because we're speaking about Son House, and we're going to eventually speak about Muddy Waters. We're eventually going to speak about Big Bill Bronzy and Howlin' Wolf. A lot of people see Howlin' Wolf in band mode, but not see him as just him and his guitar. Howlin' Wolf comes out of the chamber of Charlie Patton, where Son House comes out of the chamber of Rube Lacey. They all kind of come from Rube Lacey, you know. But when you're thinking about blues as oral history, when you're thinking about communal dialogue, we can't forget one of the things I've been talking about for weeks, and that's call and response. Musically, hold on, let me talk to my people. Musically, call and response doesn't just happen between singer and audience, pastor and congregation. Call and response happens between guitar and performer. So you strumming and you singing, and then after you finish, you hit that last, right? That guitar hit you back. Whatever it is, it hits you back. Whatever it is, it hits you back. That's the response. You're calling and responding. So you're engaged. The performer, the man. I remember used to seeing on a train in New York, Poetry in Motion, right? So the blues is all history in motion. And so this oral history in motion that's being watched, we're engaged in, or we're engaged in it, but we're also we're participating and watching oral history happening right in front of us, between the performer, and it's his or her instrument. The performer and their two instruments, because the voice is an instrument. And then if they're playing the guitar, that's the instrument. Okay? And we have Charlie Patton as well. Do I have a picture of Charlie? I'm sorry, I don't have a picture of Charlie up here. Because, Charlie, we spoke about Charlie Patton a few times. But he's another one that embodies this call and response. That's right. I like that picture, man. I like that picture a lot. Okay, so now we can move on. We can move on to the blues as oral history and sensory. Blues as oral history and sensory. And I need y'all to listen to Scrapper Blackwell. Matter of fact, that's my notes, y'all. Don't feel no way. If you all are public speakers, radio hosts, performers, and you don't have notes, come on. I'm typing something right now because I want to make sure. Because Scrapper played a lot. He came up with Leroy Carr, and you guys need to. And here's something crazy. Leroy Carr and Scrapper Blackwell establishes their blues Indiana Avenue, Indianapolis, Indiana, where blues, jazz, and a whole bunch of traditional black music flourished. And as oral history, not just the music and the song and spoken word, but the dance. A lot of prominent dances, tap dancing and all that comes out of Indiana Avenue in Indianapolis, Indiana. And their movement is oral history. But that's not what we talk about today, but I wanted to just make sure I shared that with y'all so you understand what we're talking about, how this all fits together, right? So now blues, again, is breathing. It's not stuck on the paper. It is a sensory evocation is what I would call it. See, it's not just a form of music, but it's an active force. that informs communal interactions and traditional engagement. It is the stories told through the blues, for the blues people. And in these stories, in these sensory evocations, you get life. I know that sounded really dramatic, right? But it's again, hold on, let me chop it over with my people. Again, this goes back to the kitchen being the sanctuary where you spoke to your mama at, where you spoke to your grandmama and your aunties at. Hell, where you spoke to your pops and your grandpops and your uncles. All of this happens in the kitchen. Even if the kitchen, because see, it would. I know a lot of y'all. Oh, we was in the dining room, we was in the hallway. There were times that a good majority of you that was involved in these interactions and communal dialogues, if you will, may have been in the hallway of the apartment, not the building, but the whole, or in the dining room, in rooms just outside of the kitchen for a couple of reasons. And one of those reasons is because the kitchen might have been very small, right? Hey, little lady, the kitchen might have been small. So you had, now there's also the thing of, well, this wasn't the conversation for you. So the women of the family, the matriarchs and their lineage, they may be holding, a very important medical discussion. And what do I mean by medical discussion? In the kitchen. The kitchen is a sanctuary. The kitchen is the hospital. Kitchen is the nursing home. The kitchen is where the root doctor works. The kitchen is where the ministering happens. The kitchen is where the professor educates the student. The kitchen is where Danielson and Miyagi happen. Yeah, I did. But I want, I'm being funny, but I want you to understand how this works and why these things are important. And these things that we discuss, as in communal interactions and traditional engagements, become oral history as it's played out or performed in blues, in discussion, or and so on, in vocal discourse, if you want to be academic about it. Now, I'm sharing with you Howlin' Wolf on this particular segment because I don't forget to listen to Scrapper Blackwell and Leroy Carr. But an integral part of the blues is improvisation. And so, which brings me back to the book, Grassroots Democracy by Benjamin Barson, because he spoke about improvisation being a revolutionary and political act in jazz, right? No, I'm not. Just to be clear, I am not down to. It was a great book. Like I said, he's looking for a utopia out of a dystopia, if I'm saying it right, dystopian, making beauty out of horrible situations, but also finding the beauty in how folks utilized their cultural expression to make strong statements, political statements, if you will. I may find this guy in interview, but that's not That's not what we're talking about. I bring that up because, again, this idea of blues and jazz being separate entities, that didn't happen until later on, and it happened by folk who were not folk group members of the blues people, because the term jazz comes from a band that was playing brass blues. Now, yeah, absolutely. You know, the classic blues, as they call it, which is the women in blues, the early uh, commercially viable performance of blues is informed by women, and their performance is oral history today, because their performance uh, uh, through sensory, through lyrics, and everything that comes and everything in between informs us of that time. But going back to improvisation and being an integral part of the blues, I go back to what I just said, because usually when you hear the term improvise, you think jazz. Most people don't use the term improvise when you think about blues. And if I'm wrong, please tell me. I know a few people who would love to tell me I'm wrong, and I'm good with that. I'll, concede and find the information that's correct. That's why this is a conversation, right? But now this improvisation supports this living tradition that allows the cultural expression. However, let's not again romanticize or think about this magical Negro sitting on some porch with a I don't know, unrehearsed gift or skill, right? Improvising just means utilizing something practiced in the moment that may not be part of that particular composition. I mean, that's my interpretation and definition. It's like like hip hop and freestyling coming off the top, and a lot of people just thought that just meant when they freestyling, they're just saying anything that comes to their mind. Now, there's some people who could do that really well, but what happens is it goes back to them being rehearsed. So their style, if you will, is rehearsed, or yeah, the style is rehearsed, so they could kind of bring different ideas in the moment and make it sound good, because they've worked on their craft. I don't like romanticizing these ideas of the magical Negro and stuff like this, of people who did not put time and effort into the abilities that they possess, right? So now we want to speak about improving, and take Howlin' Wolf for an example, or Scrapper Blackwell, who I keep talking about, right? Tommy Johnson, Sylvester Weaver, all of these folk, and Memphis Minnie, just to say the least, they all embody this tradition, right? Where they were able to, they worked enough, they embodied the tradition, and they practiced and played enough as if the blues was a part of them. They could channel uh, scales or what have you in the moment, but it's because they were doing it a lot, right? I have to be clear, because I don't want y'all thinking, oh, these guys are just, no, they're not magical Negroes, okay? Now, I do want to discuss because we also wanted to, in this conversation of improvisation, and in this conversation of blues' oral history and sensory evocation, we want to talk about I want to find something specific for y'all, because this idea of lyrical themes, right? This idea, and it's not an idea. Lyrical themes, plain and simple, lyrical themes, and this is about storytelling and testimony. But in storytelling and testimony, you still get sensory interaction, right? And I think out of a lot, all these performers are dynamic, right? Howlin Wolf and Muddy Waters. We're gonna talk about these two brothers, and Big Bill, even Robert Johnson. You know, I'm gonna put on Big Bill real quick, because all of these musicians, all of these singers, these performers, they were telling stories. One of my favorite songs, this is Big Bill Brunsey, who is a phenomenal musician, you know, just a phenomenal guitarist all around. But his blues is what I resonate with, right? And he has a tune called Blackwater Blues where he's talking about the flood of Mississippi. I believe it's the storm of 1927. And one of the things, now here's something that kind of, I don't want to say it calls hypocrisy to what I said about in the moment and then later on, because he does this song, and give or take, when does he do this song? I'm gonna look it up, because so right now I'm looking it up, right? What year he did the song in, because this is a song. What year did this is a song that came out before, right? I'm trying to find when he did the song. The reason why it's very important and significant for me to, okay, let me tell you, the reason why it's significant for me to find when he actually performs and records this song is because he gives it context as he begins to sing the song and says, I'm going to do it like the old days. This is a song Bessie used to sing all the time, because I believe Bessie Smith wrote the song, if I'm not mistaken. Right? And again, it's about the 1927 flood. Right? It rained 5 days. Boom, 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 boom. A Mississippi storm, which man, there are blues musicians that will tell you the story about that storm. Sun Pie out in New Orleans, Zydeco player, harmonica player. He's serious business, and I believe his daddy or his granddaddy was working the levees when that storm happened. But ultimately, what I'm saying is how this is all history in the moment. He's singing his song. I'm trying to see when he actually sang it. I believe they're saying he sang it. Okay, so he sings this in 1951, evoking or giving context or presenting as oral history the song that was written by Bessie Smith many years prior. She actually recorded the song. I'm sorry. I thought the Storm was in 1927. She actually recorded the song February 17th, 1927. Bessie Smith records the song February 17th, 1927. She writes the song and is about one of the most disastrous Mississippi floods, right? And then in 1951, he re-records it. And I keep repeating this because I want y'all to understand he's evoking oral history through performance and giving context. But in the moment, written by Bessie Smith, she's evoking oral history by telling the story of this storm that affected Mississippi. So it can be done in the moment. I just don't know. So I guess you could say in some cases, I can imagine. It's not just for this song, but this period. You know what? We got to record this song so people could know what it was like. Like Strange Fruits. That's an intentional song. You know? So Big Bill Bronzy, storyteller, telling the story about the storm, but evokes it as an oral history from the past, as the writer of the song is giving an oral history testimony of an experience when it was written and performed in originally in 1927. Now I'm about to pull up Howlin' Wolf, Smokestack, Lightnin, because now we're talking about coded messages. So we talk storytelling, testimony, and then vernacular, specific communal vernacular. We're still discussing the communal dialogue as oral history. So it's kind of, man, there's so many tentacles on this tree, because thinking of how we define oral history as the preserving and passing down of knowledge, then it goes to, in some cases, these are specific messages to specific groups of people who know the language, right? So now if you think about or Muddy Waters, before we even get to Smokestack Lightnin, one of the songs I sing all the time is Country Blues by Muddy Waters, and it does have a different title. Later on in the evening, child, I feel like blowing my horn, right? And so in that song, he uses the term ride blind, right? Who else said that? Robert Johnson. Now we talk about floaties, but we're not going to, I don't know if we're going to get there today because we're already at 120 hour and a half. We're just about at an hour and a half. But riding the blinds means catching the train, okay? It also means, escaping Jim Crow. But anyway, what I'm getting to is, so you have these songs, right? And riding the blind, catching the train, going in the north from the Jim Crow South. These are testimonies, these are messages, these are stories, but these are oral histories, right, of experiences, and it should be giving you an idea of what's going on at these times. Like I spoke about Robert Johnson last week with protest songs, right? But I think even though there was protest in Hellhounds on My Trail, I believe that would fit more into today's episode, as Hellhounds on My Trail would be an oral history of escaping, eluding, run away from, or fighting slave hounds. Right, so that's the oral. I would say no one wants to preserve that, right? So I would say that's the passed down knowledge. And we have that same thing, not just in the blues, but we have that in the field hollers. We have that in hymns. We have that in, like the drinking gourd and stuff like this, right? Or a lot of these songs, though they're messages, they're also oral histories of what was going on at the time, right? So now, you see Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Water. I'll keep Howlin' Wolf up a little bit while we talk about Smokestack. Lightnin, you know, what's Smokestack Lightnin? Why is it just like gold? And why is he asking the baby to ride? Right? Hmm? So ultimately, I just want to, and then, well, we spoke about his performance, and if we haven't, you need to go see um a video of Howlin' Wolf or in Muddy Waters. He's very dynamic. Now, I want to talk briefly, and then we're going to end this session, about floating verses, which is called a shared, which I'm calling a shared repertoire, because you have Son House, then you have Robert Johnson, then you have Muddy Water, right? And then you have Jack Dappa Blues, right? Son House song, Low Down Dirty Dog Blues, Son House song, Walking Blues, Son House song, uh, some of the renditions of Death Letter Blues and some of the renditions of Love You Can't Moan. Oh, and then Black Woman, Black Mama, right? I'm so happy you're enjoying the show, Brother Slim. So there's Black Mama, right? Then you have and Walking Blues. Then you have Robert Johnson, Walking Blues. You have Son House Preacher Blues. You have Robert Johnson Preaching Blues, right? Then you have Jinx Blues and Empire State Blues, and you have Willie Brown. I can't think of the name of Willie Brown's song. My guitar's not there. I can't think of the name of Willie Brown's song. And then you have Charlie Patton does it too with a couple of songs. You have Howlin' Wolf. I can't think of the name of the song. He does it. And you have going back to some of those other songs. You have, like I just spoke about, Muddy Waters with Country Blues. So Muddy Waters with Country Blues. Oh, and Skip James, Hard Time Killing Floor. So a lot of these cats are not only sharing compositions that's coming from their regional areas, but they're also sharing and being informed by lyrics, right? So you can hear. Woke up this morning, reach around for my shoes, guess I had to walk a blues. Robert Johnson and Son House says this. Son House first. right? Blues ain't nothing but a low down shake a chair. They all said this, right? Um, and so this shared repertoire, shared lyrics, passed down lyrics evoke a couple of things, right? Tampa Red, that's right, that's right. That is 1,000% accurate. This shared these shared lyrics and compositions that some people like to just say it comes from Dockery Plantation, but it doesn't just come from there. And I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying, well, anyway, that's not the conversation what we're talking about. This also informs us as a way of maybe not passing down the actual folkloristic story, but that's where preservation and conservation come in, right? So remember, we established oral history is not just the passing down of knowledge, but it is the preserving through song performance, right? So now you have all these brothers and sisters, one after the other, preserving what we can consider a significant blues note or a significant blues lyric that they want to make sure that it gets over to that next generation. That's oral history. And this is the blues as oral history. So, okay, great folks. I'm so happy that we was able to spend this time together. We'll be back next week. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, we pretty much ran through the whole thing, right? The whole idea of blues is oral history. The one thing I want to leave y'all with, honestly, and I'm going to read this because I want to make sure I did not forget. You know, the blues, again, is more than just music. It is the vessel of all history. It is a sensory experience that carries cultural memory and a communal dialogue that spans generation. So it's tangible and intangible. You understand what I mean? It preserves and conserves the lived experiences of Black Americans, providing testimony to joy, struggle, resistance, survival, and hell, just a good time. Everything ain't so bad. I had a good time on Friday nights, when everybody, we all come home from school and everybody's at my grandparents' house. We had a good time on Sundays when everybody came over and we watched movies like Claudine or plays on PBS or CBS like Pearly, So all these things constitute how blues is all history because all these things are expressed through blues, right? Also, now we have to get to, I guess, what you could call the pseudo academic. And I say pseudo being funny, but blues as all history, it functions to me much like folklore. Okay? It evolves with each telling, shaped by the voices that carry it forward. Let's say that again because this is a very important point. Me and my cohorts that play blue, I can't speak for everybody. I don't pick cotton. And I'm not a sharecropper. And I will never ever talk down to those who did. I'm just making a point. I didn't plow a mule, you know. So I can't perform the blues from that space, right? I mean, if you listen to any musician, you're supposed to carry it forward. However, you listen to my brother Quan, John Tavius Willis, he'll tell you you're supposed to carry it forward, keeping the main blues notes, right? So you're not throwing to the wind the sound that makes it what it is, the tradition that makes it what it is, but you're supposed to put your spin, or if you say like my brother Marquise Knox, you're supposed to be talking about what's going on right now in the day. So that's what that means by it evolves with each telling, shaped by the voices that carry it forward. Because it is, I mean, Chris Thomas King made a same claim. Okay. Matter of fact, that's why I keep telling you, go back and watch. Well, listen, because we didn't film it. We recorded it to the interview I did, and the interview was based on his open letter when he was checking the Music Academy for trying to tell a blues person what blues is. Blues is not static. And through the passing down of floating verses and the spirit and dynamic of performance and the specific vernaculars used, because some of the languages I use come from my grandparents, my parents, uncles, aunts, and all the way down. So some of the vernaculars used and vocal phrasing that we came up with in the church or wherever you were exposed to the phrasing of what I call Black traditional music expression, with that, the storytelling and the lyrics that it embodies in the blues is the oral traditions that predate written history and formal documentation. You hear what I say? You hear what I say? Woo! I mean, I don't know. We could talk about the blues all night. I kind of want to play them right now. But anyway, all right. So, so I hope you got something from this. Okay. Remember, if I get 20 Patreons, I'll do my next. That's why I haven't done the blues blog. So if I get my next 20 paid Patreons, paid tiers, then I will do my next blues blog. And those of you who are paid Patreons, obviously will get this album free. Not to mention, well, yeah, it's kind of free because you're paying for the back scenes, right? And there's another project I'm working on with the filmmaker out here. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you about it yet. But yeah, so I hope you understand. And again, lastly, this was going to be like a my blog, blues blog post about how I approach blues. But I thought this was a bigger and better conversation than just me. But for us to discuss this, I wish more of you spoke. But I'm happy you listened. If you're passive listening because you're busy and doing stuff, I'm happy. I'm just happy you rocking. But yeah, I thought this was something that we needed to on the YouTube, Facebook level, Instagram level, have this discourse, right? But so come next week, I'm telling you, I'm going to get this time down. But between 9 and 10 p.m. Central Time, trust and know, unless you see any messages from me via YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, that we were not going to be able to broadcast, then I'll be here on Sunday. We'll be discussing something. Oh, and you know what else? If there's a topic relating to the blues and the folklore of the people, the blues people, that you want me to dive in detail, let me know. Hit me up. All right, hit me up. So hopefully this I don't know if you can use this for the week, but at least we were able to discuss some blues, and you can be possibly more relaxed going into your work week, unless you play the blues for a living, or if you do any kind of cultural work, you should be excited anyway. All right, y'all. Now I'm rambling, so it's time to go. Thank y'all for rocking. Remember, learn them blues. Always, always, always take an active role in being the holder of the scroll of your tribe, your family. Okay? You tell the narrative. Don't let nobody else tell your story. Take care. Good night. Have a good week.